Hey everyone, welcome to the round 16 player ratings. The dreaded player ratings after a disappointing loss. Got to get it done. It's the best way to move on. Get it all out there, get it off your chest, say what needs to be said, think what needs to be thought, and then we can move on to next week. And, it's a big break, and we've got the Eagles, so we've got to be ready for that. If you're new to the player ratings videos, welcome. This is really what I use for the votes for the end of the year when it comes to crowning the Blue Abroad Player of the Year. Essentially, I give each player a score out of 10, relative only to their specific circumstance. There's no comparative analysis between one player to another. It's just within themselves and their role. If you think any of these scores should be changed, please let me know in the comments below what the score should be and why. And then we can make changes to that and crown the player of the year at the end of the year. Also, doing a bit, they sponsor these videos. So be sure to check out them as well. We've got a 20% discount for all Blue Abroad people on the Doing a Bit website. So make sure you do check that out. Now, really just going to talk about this as the team was named. We'll start with Brodie Kemp. I'm loving what he's bringing and what he's providing over the last few weeks. In both games, this week and last week, I think he started off probably getting outmarked a little bit from his direct opponent and being sort of on the end of some beautiful entries, but ultimately against his opponent. So I think he does a really good job of working himself back into it, and he's very competitive and he hurts the opposition the other way. He gets a bit of the ball. He's got this offensive flair to him. I actually thought he was outstanding. I gave him an 8 for his game. He's such a young fella. Again, his development path has been so unique because he's been playing forward, he's been playing back and going back forward. Now he's playing as a defender in the ones. I think when Wiedering's back, I'd love to see Kemp still in the side because I think he can really provide us something, offensively from defense. So I'm really excited for him. So I gave him an 8. Youngie, the stats will say that Max King kicked 3. But I thought Lewis Young's job on Max King and just in general was outstanding. I thought he was great. I thought he defended really well. And I gave him a 9 for his game. I'm just putting a lot of gravity on what we're asking him to do compared to what we were asking him to do at the start of the year when, round 1 he wasn't selected to play in the team. And if you think about, how far he's come in, 16 rounds, it's a really good story. And I've just got, again, so much more faith and confidence when he's on the field. And another example of when Wiedering is back, I just think he's going to be an even better player for it. So, yeah, I thought he was outstanding. Maybe I'm being a little generous by giving him a 9, but I was really, really impressed with his game. Then we've got Lockheed Plowman. I gave him a 7. He made a few mistakes, as they all did, a few critical errors, kicked the ball relatively well, made some good decisions by foot. It was just a bit of a mixed bag. Some good, some bad. I thought he was more good than what he was bad. I gave him a 7 for his game. Newman, pretty much the same. I didn't feel like he was as influential as what he has been in the past, but he always finds a way to defend well, play hard, is a really reliable and consistent player for us. So I gave him a 7. Adam Saad, I thought he was outstanding. I gave him a 9 for his game. It was good to see that the Wolf was back, and full credit to everyone that got involved. I think the conversation really started on the jumper punch, and then it just sort of evolved from there. And the fact that it actually happened is a real testament to the power of the fan base and what we're able to do. So, yeah, I thought Saadi was great. Won a lot of the ball, used it well, and so I gave him a 9. Doc, I gave him a 7. He has had an unbelievable, probably 3 to 4 week block. And I just felt like in this game, he just wasn't as influential as what he has been in the last few weeks. St Kilda do a good job on him. Brett Ratton puts a lot of time into Sam Doherty, and I think there's a strategy there at play. And it was what it was. He wasn't poor at all. I gave him a 7. Just wasn't as influential. Made a few errors that were uncharacteristic, and it was what it was. Next up, we've got O'Brien, Cripps, and Chera. O'Brien, I gave him a 5. I flirted with giving him a 4, but what I loved about his game, obviously he's had the 12 possessions. It's not all about possessions, but you obviously want him winning a bit more of the ball. It kind of reminded me of when I look at his stats, it reminded me of what we've been seeing over the last few years, where it's just like he winning enough of the ball? Is he impacting enough of the game? Nonetheless, I thought his tackling was really impressive. There was a really strong one on the opposite side of the wing from the bench, from where I was, and just really brought the house down with that. It was just good to see him play with a little bit of force there. Ultimately want him to probably just be winning a bit more of the ball than 12 times, but I know he relies on others to win the ball for him because he plays that wing role, so maybe it's a little unfair. I gave him a pass mark, so we'll leave it there. Cripps, I gave him a 7. He had I like looking at his stats when he handballs more than he kicks because it tells me that he's playing to his strengths. The really interesting one, which I thought was a bit disappointing, was that he laid 1 tackle. Played on Jack Steele, who laid 9. We really needed Cripper to lead the charge there with his intensity and the tackling pressure, and I just didn't quite see that from him. Still had a pretty good game. He's won the ball, 31 times, used it relatively well, 19 contested possessions, 8 clearances. So he had a really good game, but I think that the tackling, he's really got to help us lead the way there, and kind of want to see him be aggressive again. I think he's dipped a little bit in that. Nonetheless, I thought there was a patch probably in the 3rd or the 4th where I think he won like 3 or 4 clearances in a row and just exploded out of pack. So think he's having a really good year, but would love to see him, just really bring that tackle heat and help us in that regard as well. So I gave him a 7. Chera, I thought we lost on the night with the Adam Chera situation. Now, I'm not sure exactly what the plans were because, Jordan Boyd comes out, didn't name, a like for like. Maybe and I noticed Chera at times was half forward, then he was half back, and then he was on the wing. He did not attend a centre bounce at all, which I thought was interesting. And he just didn't look to have the same zip as what he has early in the season. Now, obviously, he's coming back from injury, so he's clearly not going to be looking as sharp as what he would be had he been playing, 4 or 5 games in a row. But yeah, I just thought he wasn't able to influence. Really uncharacteristic turnover. Kicked across the face of goal almost and turned it over and the Saints kicked a goal from it. But he'll bounce back. He's a class player and he's a hard worker and I've got faith in him. But I gave him a 4 for the game. Next, we've got Honey, Walsh and Motlop. Honey, loved the flashes that Honey provides. It's going to take time to see that more consistently, and that's really what we need. And I guess it begs the question, what do? Do you play Jack Martin or do you play Josh Honey? Josh Honey's the youngster. Josh Honey's got the youth on his side. Not that Martin's old, but I just wonder what the conversations are about because Martin is also, like a burst player. He sort of is a bit patchy. I wouldn't say Martin's a consistent player across the 4 quarters. And I think Honey's in the same boat. I think once it comes down to it, when push comes to shove, if you're playing in a final, I think I'm picking Jack Martin. But nonetheless, I think Honey's there's just something there. He's got something. There's a capability around what he can do with the ball in hand. And I thought he was solid. I gave him a 6 for his game. Walsh, I gave him a 7 for his game. Very similar to Cripps in that they've both had really good games. Let's not take anything away from that. They've played well, won a lot of the ball. Didn't mark the ball, Walsh, which I thought was interesting because at Marvel, one of the things that I noticed with Walsh, not just at Marvel, really any game, is his work rate around the ground. I think the Saints did a pretty good job of being aware of him, and he was the only player on the ground for us that did not take a mark. He usually has a really good ability to find space and get the kick mark game going. And then obviously as well, he's laid the 2 tackles. So just, want him and Cripps to lead that charge with the tackling because Hewitt's going to bring it. Kennedy's going to bring that as well. But yeah, I gave Walshy, gave him a 7, but I think that's a little low. I'm going to give him an 8. He was very good. They both were very good. Motlop, maybe this is controversial, but I gave Jesse Motlop a 10. In terms of his role, what's he there to do? Put pressure on, hopefully hit the scoreboard. He's hit the scoreboard 3 times. The first 2 goals were critical goals in that the Saints had the momentum. We needed something. We needed someone to provide something. And he provided it on both occasions with his first 2 goals. And they were both rippers. He looked a lot better than what he did last week. I remember making the comment around last week where he started well, then maybe faded off, whereas this week he didn't fade out as anywhere near as much. If anything, he seemed to get a lot more comfortable with the game as it kept going, and it's got me thinking, like, wow, is he locking himself in? Because if he is, it's a great result for us. We're missing Matt Owies, who's a very important part of what we do, but just to know that Motlop's developing in the short amount of time that he's been at the club is really impressive. So I loved his game. Can't ask for much more than that. I gave him a 10. So well done to him. Next, we've got Charlie, Harry, and Jack Silvani. I actually gave all three of them just a bare pass mark. Charlie, obviously a bit inaccurate, still provides the contest, still brings the ball to ground, marks relatively well, but 1 goal for just isn't going to get it done. So I gave him a bare pass mark. Harry, very much the same in the sense that just didn't go above and beyond, just got his job done, I thought, just on the night. He did provide a good option down the line, marking the ball high up, which I think I think that's where it works better, when Charlie's inside the 50 leading up and Harry is up the wing. But at the same time, they can interchange that for sure. That's the beauty of them when they work together. And I think they have this really special ability, the two of them, to kick the ball in dangerous spaces for the other. And there was a beautiful kick from, I think it was Charlie to Harry. It was just a peach of a kick. And you just want to see more of it. But ultimately, we just didn't see enough of it. And I thought they were primed for a big game because the Saints are a little bit decimated in their defence with their tall stocks. And then Dougal Howard goes off as well and gets subbed out. And you're thinking, wow, this is Harry's opportunity. But it just didn't seem to come. And they didn't have their kicking boots on. And it was what it was. Now, Jack battled as he always does. Did his thing. I just gave him a bare pass mark. I didn't feel like he did too much above and beyond his role. Maybe 5's a little bit harsh on him. Maybe I'll bump that up to a 6. I'll let you debate that in the comments. But I didn't feel like he had the same influence as what he has had over the last few weeks. So I don't know. See how that one plays out. De Koning, Kennedy, and Hewitt. De Koning, I gave him a pass mark as well. Tough situation. You got Ryder and Marshall. Ryder was probably the best player on the ground, kicked the 2 goals, had the 31 hitouts, and really just dominated that contest. De Koning is just going through this patch of his career. I've got such faith in him and what he's about. I thought he did some really good things, don't get me wrong, but ultimately I just felt like a pass mark was just. Kennedy, I gave him an 8. Most of the reason why I gave him an 8 is because he hit the scoreboard and kicked critical goals for us. Had the 21 touches, laid the 5 tackles, used the ball pretty well. Has a really good balance of contested possessions within what he wins, and kicked 2 goals. Thought he was really good. Hewitt, I also gave him an 8. He had the 22 touches, which is probably a little less than what he usually has, but 10 tackles. I love seeing it. We needed to bring the heat at the contest, and he certainly was. I thought he was our best midfielder when it came to providing the heat and the hunt, and that's what he is, and that's what he does, and that's why we love him, because he does all the tough stuff. Then we've got the bench, so Durden, Fisher, Noons, and Cottrell. Durden, I gave him a 7. The pressure was there. He almost hit the scoreboard, just couldn't get there. Laid the 4 tackles. Works his way up the ground. We're starting to see a real pattern with his game in what he does. And, eventually the next layer for him will be just to win a little bit more of the ball. And I think that will come. He seems to be running out games a bit better than what he has had in the past. And, I think he's coming along really well. Gave him a 7. Fisher, I gave him an 8. He had the 21 and 1 goal. Beautiful goal. A very much needed goal. Obviously went back to his half-forward-ish role. And I actually thought when he went into the midfield at times throughout the game, he looked really good, like really good. So I'm not sure what we do with the balance of his game and how many midfield minutes he gets, but he seems to really be a lot better when he goes into the midfield or just when he's in space. I think he's just having a really solid year. Noonsy, I gave him a 5. I think he really filled the gap for Boyd's absence. But I just didn't get a good read on his game. I didn't feel like he was influential enough for me to say anything more than a pass mark. I don't know. It was a really tough one to judge. And then Cottrell, I gave him an 8. Matty Cottrell had, I'm going to say, a 6 to 7 minute patch of form. I think it was in the third quarter, where everything he did was just elite. It was really impressive. I remember sitting there, and I think he had like 3 or 4 or 5 possessions sort of in a row, or 5 contests in a row, and every single time, the way he won the ball, the way he cleared it out, the way he kicked it, he is really improving week on week. He seems to have got some serious confidence about how he goes about it, and I loved his game, so I gave him an 8. Those are the player ratings. Not a good result. We'll be right. We'll be fine. I think the boys will bounce back next week, and just an inaccurate and wasteful night in front of goal. So let me know what you think about the scores. Some of them will change for sure. Write a comment. What should the score be for whatever you think should be changed, and why? And we'll go from there. Go the Mighty Blues.